What's up guys, it's Bliskin here, and it's been a while since I've made a Metal Gear video, so that's what we're going to do today. Now, I know if you've been watching my channel, specifically when I talk about Metal Gear, you will have heard the phrase, bread and butter. What does this mean? What am I talking about? I've explained it briefly in videos before, but I never made a proper video talking about it. So, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Whenever you go to a restaurant, maybe this is just what I've experienced in my life, but usually as an appetizer in most Western countries, or not even as an appetizer, but just something that's already on the table, the most basic thing you can expect to see when you come to a restaurant is bread and butter. It's simple, it's effective. If you're starving and you need to take the edge off, that's it right there, and that constitutes the most basic part of that restaurant experience. So in relation to sandboxes, bread and butter means the most basic part of a sandbox. And when we talk about Metal Gear in regards to this bread and butter analogy, we're talking about the most basic elements in the game. What are those most basic elements? Well, I think we can sum it up with two different sandbox elements. A really quiet gun that you use for sneaking around, and a gun that you can rely on in combat scenarios or in the more high-octane sections of the game. So let's take a look at this combo, this bread and butter of stealthy and combat, and talk about how it's evolved. I'll be talking about the mainline games starting with Metal Gear Solid. I'm not going to include Portable Ops or Peace Walker just because I feel that would make the video a little too long, and there's a lot of redundancy there. So let's start with Metal Gear Solid 1. The first element within our bread and butter combo would be the SOCOM. This right here is the most basic that the game can get. When you first start, it's the only gun that you have. So for combat, this is the weapon that you're always going to be relying on at the start, and it's competent. It can take down enemies in a couple shots, but if you get swarmed by multiple opponents, you're not going to come out on top. However, when you find the suppressor for the SOCOM, everything changes. Now this gun becomes extra competent and a must-have in your experience because now you can take out enemies from a distance completely silent. This becomes really important as you get to harder parts of the game with harder stealth puzzles and challenges. What about the other end of the spectrum, that other basic element of the sandbox? In this case here, we have the FAMAS. The FAMAS you find pretty early on, and really fast you come to realize this is the gun you whip out when you fuck up. If you trigger an alert, you take the FAMAS out and it's going to get you out of that scenario alive. You also use it for boss fights. Anything where the game starts throwing heavy combat sections at you, you rely on the FAMAS. So in short, the start of this bread-butter combo can be seen with the SOCOM and the FAMAS, a stealth tool that you can use to get by puzzles, and a combat tool you can use when the game demands more from you. But now we come over to Metal Gear Solid 2, and things have changed. The way they handle the sandbox has expanded, they're experimenting a lot more with the weapons they're putting in there, and this bread and butter combo is definitely affected by that. Now, you remember how the SOCOM acted as your starting combat weapon as well as your stealth tool? Here in Metal Gear Solid 2, those roles are divided. They take specifically the stealth elements of the SOCOM for solving, stealth challenges and getting by guys undetected, and they put that into the M9. Now, the M9 is perfectly curated for capital S stealth. Every time you pull the trigger, you have to manually cock the gun back in order to chamber another round. It's permanently suppressed. You can't aim down the iron sights, however, you have a nifty laser that helps you be uber accurate as you're exploring the game's environments. During combat, if you know what you're doing, this can be useful, but you can't rely on it in the heavier combat sections in the game. So they've taken that specifically stealth-only approach and applied it to this pistol. As while you have limitations like a slower fire rate, you also have rounds that are completely silent and lesser consequences if bodies are found. A guard is going to react a lot less if they see a sleeping guy in comparison to a dead guy. Now what about that initial combat role that the SOCOM in the first game had? Well, they took that and they fused it together with the FAMAS's role. Now you have the USP or SOCOM respectively. That is much more competent than its first game counterpart, because now you can aim down the sights in first person and be a lot more accurate if you choose to be. They also have significantly higher fire rates. So, even though the USP-9 and the SOCOM don't do as much damage as the M4 or AK, they can still pelt out enough rounds to always be competent. But now you might be thinking, Plisken, wouldn't that combat weapon shift over to the AK and the M4? And yeah, it does. However, that base bread and butter combo of stealthy combat, quick combat encounters to escape from an alert phase, you can't really use the M4 or the AK. I mean, the AK you can kind of use, but it's still incredibly unwieldy. But when you find the suppressors for the USP and SOCOM respectively, all of a sudden they become the perfect hybrid of a stealth combat tool. You can use it for combat, but you can also use it when a guy spots you and take him out before he has time to radio it in. These pistols also shape themselves and differentiate themselves from the M9 by serving a utility role. I've seen an alarming amount of comments talking about how, when you play through any Metal Gear game after 2, there's no reason to use anything but the Tranq pistol. And Metal Gear Solid 2 is very quick to dispel this claim. Anyone who thinks that honestly hasn't played Metal Gear Solid 2. In the tanker mission at the very start of the game introduces you to Semtex puzzles. In these puzzles, you cannot do damage to the Semtex control units with your M9. You need that USP. And later on in the game, you'll also need the SOCOM for similar puzzles. If you want to take out security cameras and you don't have a chaff grenade on you, you also need to use these weapons if you plan to stay quiet. When you're holding guys up and they're resisting you, you're not going to get those dog tags if you use the M9, but if you use the other respective pistols, now you have a chance at getting what you want. So there is a niche and need for both of these pistols to work in unison, and that's why they serve as bread and butter. They work together to form that basic foundation. Now, as we move on to Snake Eater, the experimenting with the sandbox continues, and these roles start to get a little blurred. The Tranq pistol is still the Tranq pistol by all means. If anything, the MK22 takes everything from the M9 and builds upon it. That accuracy, that long range, the low consequence stealth, it tries to balance it out a little bit more by having like degradable suppressors. You can use it how you normally use it and just take down enemy guards, or you could take it and use it to interact with the environment, knock down fruits off the trees, or collect animals for later. The options are expanded. This is a true evolution of the Tranq pistol. However, the 1911 fails as a utility weapon, and I feel like this was done so on design. You see, the M1911 has nothing on the first game's SOCOM or the second game's USP and SOCOM respectively. This weapon has next to nothing for ammo, next to nothing for damage, and unless you're going around and getting headshots, this thing's going to be pretty useless. There's also no cameras or gun ciphers in Metal Gear Solid 3, making less of a need to actually use this type of weapon when you're sneaking around. Hence the whole argument of all you need is the Tranq pistol kind of starts to ring true here. However, you start getting weapons like the M16 that show how the development team want to shift this whole combat utility stealth role back over to assault rifles. They want to take the FAMAS and the USP and merge them together in a stealthy rifle package that can do everything the pistols from the second game could do, but can also serve that role that the FAMAS does, and the M16 does this really freaking well. Does this invalidate the 1911? Abso-freaking-lutely. However, if you start looking at that evolution, not necessarily as a linear line, but seeing the hiccups along the way as they struggle to figure out how exactly they're going to do this, it starts to make sense when you look at Snake Eater. As we move on to Metal Gear Solid 4, you see a lot of the same issues that Snake Eater had, except cranked up to 11. There's so many guns in the game that are just freaking useless. However, that bread and butter combo in terms of refining into a package of a stealthy trank pistol and a stealthy combat assault rifle, we see this in the Ruger Mark II and the M4. The Ruger Mark II expands on the M9 formula in a different way than Snake Eater, but in one that's arguably as interesting, in the sense that you have multiple different types of ammunition that you can use when you're tranking enemies. You can put them to sleep, you can make them angry and start attacking each other, you can put them into a state of fear so you can sneak by them easier. It gives you a lot of nice options. All in all, the evolution of the trank pistol has been going quite nicely since Metal Gear Solid 2. Now over to the more contested element of this bread and butter combo, the combat utility stealth gun. The M4, if anything, is almost the perfect epitome of this, because they take it a step further and they say, hey, what if we take that M16 from Snake Eater, but merge it together with the M37 and add an explosive weapon that can be attached to it? And what if we add on optics to bridge that gap between snipers? So it turns into a gun that can kind of do everything, which, in the evolution of this utility pistol role, is brilliant, because now you have that weapon that just does all of that, like combat stealth, straight combat, long distance, boss fights with the explosive, clearing with the shotgun. You have everything in one role. So if the game was literally just the Ruger Mark II and the M4, I'd say it was balanced like a masterpiece. However, this isn't the case. The M4 is the best option in the game, but it's so drowned out by all these other choices, and then you have the M14 that kind of works better than it in a lot of ways, and they missed the mark. However, that idea of evolving the utility gun in this direction is definitely a good one. And this brings us to Metal Gear Solid 5. Does it shave off all of the issues with 4 in terms of the sandbox being bloated? No. Does it improve it by having a level up system where you start with bad guns and slowly have to unlock the better guns as you move along? Yes, the delivery of this system is a lot cleaner than what you get in 4. And how this relates to our bread and butter combo is by expanding upon it in the sense that you have a trank pistol, a non-lethal SMG, a non-lethal shotgun, a non-lethal sniper, a non-lethal rocket launcher, a non-lethal assault rifle, a non-lethal grenade launcher. So you can have all these options, and yeah, that's a bit messy, but in between all of this, you start off with the MRS-4 and the Wu Trank pistol, and these are balanced brilliantly. When you start with the Wu, the iron sights are shit, the range is shit, the suppressor degrades, and you don't have a lot of ammo. When you start with the MRS-4, it's competent, but it's still lacking because of those iron sights and the suppressor that degrades quite quickly. As you go on through the game, you unlock better versions of these two guns. The Wu eventually doubles in ammo, has a laser sight for more accuracy, has better iron sights, and a built-in suppressor. The MRS-4 gets optics, better suppressors, laser sights, flashlights, grips. Hell, you can even add grenade launchers and shotguns onto it like Metal Gear Solid 4's M4. However, here, because you have this overall level up system within the entire sandbox, it's not perfect, but it's better. I'd say it's the closest they've ever come to perfecting this whole stealthy pistol and then stealthy combat rifle role. That being said, I feel like this bread and butter combo really peaked within the tanker mission, and if you want to see this in its purest form, play that. If you want to see me talk about why I think that, go watch the first part of my Metal Gear Solid 2 review. But for now, that's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to chronicle and talk about the different development and mishaps that happened with this bread and butter combo, and how the very basic elements of the Metal Gear weapon sandbox has changed over time. If you enjoyed this, go ahead, like, subscribe. You want more Metal Gear content? Like, subscribe. If you hate everything I say and you think I'm just a massive douche for making this video, stick it in the comments. Anyways, this has been Pliskin, over and out.